testing, all right? And specifically, we're going to get started on writing unit testing. So I have the NestJS docs up here, and we'll go ahead and scroll down to unit testing. Okay, so basically what we want to do is we want to take a look at our controllers and our services, and we want to go ahead and test the smallest thing that we can, okay? So where I'm going to start is with my users service, okay? Because it has the simplest functions in it. So spec testing or unit testing is going to be, I want to test that this function works, then I want to test that this function works, okay? And so that what you're going to do is you're going to test different inputs, and you're going to make sure the outputs make sense. And you're going to do that for every single function within your service, and that is going to test your service, okay? We already have this file kind of set up. This is a kind of boilerplate spec testing file, okay? And you can see that it is saying it's going through kind of how it's setting up the test suite for you, okay? So this describe function here is essentially going to run our set up our service that we want to test and set up our testing module, and then it's going to run all of the tests within it, okay? So all of the tests are going to be these it blocks of code, right? And so it's going to run the function within there, okay? And within it, it's going to have some expect statements, okay? And those statements are going to be true, return true or false. And if they return true, then you pass the test. If you return false, then you fail the test, okay? That's kind of how it works. This is using Jest for testing as the default testing framework, okay? So let's get started. The first thing that we want to do is we want to have a service. So we are going to create our service, our user service, and we're going to call it service, okay? This before each is saying, before each test, we want to set things up. So we're going to set up a module, okay? And you'll see that that module is very similar to the module that we have here, right? Where we have providers, user service, providers, user service. So if I run this test though, all right, let's see what's gonna happen. So here it's saying the only test it's gonna run is whether or not service is defined, okay? So let's give it a try. So if you go to your package.json, you will see that you have a test command here. So we can do npm run test. Now that is going to look for all files that end with spec.ts, and it's going to run those files. We don't specifically want to run all of them. We just want to run this one. So then we're going to add source/users dot, well, we can probably just do that because then it's going to look within there. So yep, so it's running our service spec.ts. All right, we passed the test because user service is defined, but we overall fail because we aren't importing all of the right things, okay? So here it's saying the test suite failed to run because it cannot find module source/project/entities/project entity from user/entity.user-entity. So what this is telling me is that there is an import within our user entity file where it's importing the project, which you can see right here, and it can't find it. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go take a look. I like to, when I'm getting these test suites all set up, I like to just let the errors guide me, okay? Because it's gonna point out one error at a time, and as long as I'm getting a new error, every error that I'm figuring out, then we're making progress, okay? So if you look, it's importing source projects entity project entity. So the reason it's not working is because we have it like hard coded for the source file versus like a relative path in relation to where we're at now. So we actually just want to change that and write it like this, and oops, instead where we are saying that the project folder is going to be 2 folders up, and then it's going to be within the projects folder, then it's going to be within the entities folder, and then it's there. We're saying the path in relation to the user's folder versus saying, oh, it's just in the source folder. Okay, so now I saved it. If I rerun that, we get a new error, where we're saying that within the projects entity folder, we're not importing source, and you can see that we have the same issue. Okay, so even though it's a new error and even though we're making progress, we still have more files that we need to fix. Okay, so we're gonna go to the project entity and you'll see that we have source here. We also have source down here, so I'm gonna fix both of them at once. And then save. All right, and then I'm gonna rerun my test suite, which is going to give me probably, yep, the next error that I need to fix. Okay, so on feature now, so I'm gonna go find feature. All right, looks like we have another source here. So I'm gonna correct both of them, save it, and then I'm going to rerun my test. All right, now we have within task, we have the same issue, so we're going to go ahead and change that and rerun our test. But again, I'm letting the errors drive what I'm doing. All right. All right, so now we're in user stories entity, and we have 2 more. So to fix that, all right, so now we have a big new error, so that is nice. Okay, so now that the test suite can actually do its thing because we have all the imports fixed, you will see that the test is failing. Now, this error is lovely because it tells you why the test is failing. Saying Nest can't resolve dependencies of the user service. Okay, so let's go look at the user service and look at its dependencies. If you look, when we construct the user service, we are injecting the repository user. Okay, so here is saying make sure that the argument user repository can be found. Okay, so we're going to need to mock the user repository or inject the user repository. So technically, you could inject the actual user repository, but that's going to just kind of bog down our system because it's going to take longer to run those tests using the actual repository. And you don't want to test everything in unit testing. What you want to test is the smallest thing possible. You want to test your own code. Okay, so the user repository is not written by me, right? The repository and all of these functions are written, that it has these methods within it, are written by type ORM, and they have tested their functions. They work. Okay, so we are going to trust that type ORM has written code that works and is testing their code themselves. All right, we are just going to test our code. Okay, so we're testing this function here. We're not testing this function here. Okay, that took me a while to wrap my head around, so it's okay if that seems foggy right now. Just try to remember that you're testing what you wrote as small chunks as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually set up a mock user repository, okay? And we are going to add all of the methods that we use in here. Okay, so we use find one by, okay? Then we're gonna do just.fn, right? And this is just gonna mock it and say it's just a function, okay? The next one that we're gonna do is save and then delete. Okay, so save. And then again, we're just gonna mock it as a function. And then delete. We're just going to mock as a function. Okay. So in order to use this, and here, let me go ahead, and I'm not pulling this all up from my brain. I have found some different files that have helped me, some articles, and I am using it. I don't think this is the one. Trying to find the right article, which maybe I didn't save. All right, so NestJS. Maybe it's this one. Okay, yeah, here. You can see here that now this is how they are going to, this is not the exact one. Maybe it's this one. This is why I bookmark things, but okay. All right, we're gonna say this is okay. So this is using a different ORM here. It's not using type ORM. I don't believe, oh, well, it's using Mongoose, okay? So Mongoose uses models, okay, instead of we are using like the repositories. Okay, so we are gonna have to kind of edit the code a little bit, but that's fine. But see, you can see here that they are going to define their mock book service, which is going to be like like their kind of database functions, right? So we did that too. Then within here, within the providers, just like in here, we need to import the repository. We need to add this here, okay? So we're going to provide the user service, but we're also going to set up this provide, and then see here it says get model token with the kind of entity here. We're going to do the same thing, but instead we're going to say get repository token, because that's how type ORM does it. And then we're going to pass in user, our entity, and then we are going to say use value, and we are going to say mock user repository. So basically what we're going to say is we want the structure of our user entity, but we want to use our value repository for all of the methods that are within that repository. Okay? So now, hopefully, if we run our test, you will see that we passed. Okay? So now we have all of the injections properly done. We used, we used our provider and our providers array, and we added this object, provide get repository token user, and use value mock user repository. Okay, and that is how we went ahead to make sure that we could run these tests. So now we should be able to go through, okay, and one by one, we should be able to test each of our functions. All right, and we will do that in the next video.